Strapped to a gurney, about to be given a lethal injection of drugs, a convicted killer is not a happy man at all. Not because of his impending doom, but because he didn't get what he asked for. In his last words, he made that clear, saying, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." And if you think that's bizarre, by the time the show's ended, you'll have scratched your head so much there will be a bald spot. We're not finished with the SpaghettiOs guy just yet. His name was Thomas J. Grasso. On Christmas Eve 1990, he entered an 87-year-old woman's house and strangled her, taking $8 from her purse and picking up coins, which got him another $4. He also took her old TV. After being convicted and sentenced to death, he made quite a big deal about his upcoming date with a cocktail of life-ending drugs, once saying philosophically, "What we call the beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from." He wasn't done. Just 3 hours before his execution, he submitted a poem to anyone interested. It was titled "A Visit with Mystery." Here are a few lines from it. "The warden will read my last creed, and the deadly brew will flow, as the poison drips into my veins, and from my body life does drain." Not only did he lay it on heavy regarding his life's end, but he also made a meal out of his last meal. He ordered 24 steamed mussels, 24 steamed clams, and with lemon wedges too, of course. For the main course, he asked for a Burger King double cheeseburger, a stack of barbecue ribs, pumpkin pie with strawberries, all washed down with 2 strawberry milkshakes. He also asked for SpaghettiOs. As you know, Mr. Grasso left his life feeling rather down. The next man got what he wanted, although what a small and strange request it was. His name was Victor Harry Fugger. In 1960, he was sitting in his rundown room in Iowa when he took out the yellow pages and started going down the list of local physicians. The first doctor that answered the phone was Dr. Edward Bartles. He was later found in a cornfield with a bullet hole in his head. It's believed Fugger wanted the doctor's drugs. On March 15, 1963, he had one last request before being hanged. All he wanted was a solitary olive, but importantly, he wanted it with the pip left in. After he was hanged, that olive was inside the pocket of his new suit that had been bought for him. Apparently, Fugger said that he wanted the olive to grow into an olive tree, which was a sign of peace. This next person had a last request that was also symbolic, but rather than ask for peace, he wanted something out of this world. His name was James Edward Smith. On March 7, 1983, he walked into the Union Life Insurance Company in Houston wearing a mask. He demanded money from a clerk, but after she got scared, one of the executives at the company, Larry D. Rowas, talked to Smith. He actually handed over the money to Smith, but even though he was pleading for his life, Smith shot and killed him. After being tackled by a number of bystanders, Smith didn't even get as far as the street. His final request was for a piece of dirt, but he wanted a special kind of dirt, what he called Rehikunda dirt. That's because he practiced voodoo, and he believed if he marked his body with this special dirt, he could move on to the next life. He once did an interview. "I don't understand all this clinging to life. Life is a temporary situation. The spirit moves on. Death is like eating a prune in the morning. It's a natural function." He didn't get his dirt in the end, and instead he had to make do with a pot of yogurt. We doubt he smothered his body with it. The next person wasn't interested in the afterlife, but he sure wanted to enjoy his last moments in the life he had. His name was Ronnie Lee Gardner. In 1984, he shot and killed a man during a robbery in Salt Lake City. A year later, he tried to escape while being taken to a court hearing, and during that escape, he shot and killed another guy. He was Michael Burdell, who had been doing pro bono work for a local church. Gardner was a crazy guy indeed. One time he smashed the glass during visiting hours and then barricaded the door. He made love to his visitor while some other inmates watched and shouted for joy. Another time, he stabbed an inmate. During that visit to the courthouse, he somehow managed to get a gun passed to him. Also found later in the courthouse was a pair of socks with a note attached to him. It read, "Here's the gun and wallet taken from the guard at the hospital. I don't want to hurt no one else. I just want to be free." He wanted to be shot himself, saying he preferred to go via firing squad. He explained, "I liked the firing squad. It's so much easier. There are no mistakes." He wasn't wrong. Prior to his death, Gardner had a few requests in line with his crazy life. First, he asked if he could watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy. After that, he asked to be able to fast for 48 hours. He said the fasting was related to his spirituality and beliefs regarding the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For the final meal, he had steak, lobster, some apple pie with vanilla ice cream, and a can of 7-Up. When asked if he had any final words, he said, "I do not." He was strapped into a metal chair and had a hood placed over his head. Sandbags were placed all around him in case the bullets flew off someplace. 5 police officers had volunteered to do the job. They all aimed their rifles at a white piece of paper placed over Gardner's heart. Standing about 25 feet away, they opened fire. One of those guns was actually loaded with a non-lethal bullet, so the officers wouldn't know who fired the lethal shot. The authorities do this so no man has to live with being the killer of the condemned. After the shots rang out, Gardner's head went limp. although it was hard to see the blood under his dark prison attire. A medical examiner then lifted the hood, checked his vital signs, and he was pronounced dead. This next man ordered the nicest last meal you could possibly ask for. He might also have deserved to live. His name was Philip Workman. In 1981, he was 28, and he had a young child to look after. He also was afflicted with a bad cocaine habit. That led to his big mistake, walking into a Wendy's restaurant with a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol. He ordered the staff to get down on the ground, and then one of the staff said she had a cramp in her leg and needed to stand. Workman told her she could get up, but this was all a ruse because that's when she hit an alarm. The cops came, and in the end, one of them was shot and killed in the car park. But was it Workman's gun that fired the fatal shot? One expert testified, "It is my professional opinion based on a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the gunshot wound to Lieutenant Ronald D. Oliver is not consistent with the type of ammunition used by Mr. Philip R. Workman. I do not believe it was Mr. Workman's gun that fired the shot that fatally wounded Lieutenant Oliver." Looking at new evidence, some of the jurors who convicted him later renounced their decision. Workman always said he was innocent, right up until the end. It seems there's a very good chance he was indeed an innocent man, and the officer was killed by friendly fire. Nonetheless, despite appeals and protests from the public, the day came when he was asked if he had a request for a last meal. He said he didn't actually want anything, but could a vegetarian pizza be given to a homeless person? That request was denied, so Workman said he wanted nothing. A bit of encouraging news to the sad tale is that when some members of the public heard about this, they donated thousands of dollars worth of pizza to the homeless. Workman was asked if he had any final words, to which he replied, "I've prayed to the Lord Jesus Christ not to lay charge of my death to any man." The injections were given, and just after 2 minutes he managed to get out the words, "I commend my spirit into your hands, Lord Jesus Christ." And that was it. He was out for the count forever. Now for perhaps the biggest last meal ever ordered, and as you'll see, it became something that went down in US history. The man's name was Lawrence Russell Brewer. Brewer was a white supremacist who, with 2 other men, executed an African-American man in 1998. The awful crime reminded people of the atrocities committed by the Ku Klux Klan. It seemed Brewer was not at all remorseful, saying just days before his death, "As far as any regrets, no, I have no regrets. No, I'd do it all over again to tell you the truth." His request for a final meal beggars belief. In total, he asked for a large meat lover's pizza, 2 chicken fried steaks with gravy and sliced onions, a bowl of barbecue meat, a triple cheeseburger, an omelet containing beef, peppers, onions, tomatoes, and jalapenos, 3 fajitas with plenty of filling, fried okra with ketchup, half a loaf of white bread, some Bluebell vanilla ice cream, peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts, and a load of root beer. Given that states don't usually have a large budget for last meals, it's surprising that he was granted his request. Then when it arrived, he said he wasn't hungry anymore and didn't eat one morsel of the calorie-heavy feast. When asked if he had any last words, he said, "Nope, I have no final statement." Some people were disgusted over Brewer's messing the state around with his last meal, and after that, the state of Texas didn't ever offer a last meal to death row inmates again. We wouldn't be surprised if some of the people we've talked about so far you've never heard of. So here are a few last meals of people who don't need an introduction. The serial killer Ted Bundy declined a last bite, but the state gave him something anyway. That was a plate of steak and eggs, some hash browns, and a cup of coffee. He ate none of it and left the coffee alone. The killer clown we've talked about many times at the infographics show, John Wayne Gacy, did have a final meal request. He asked for 12 fried shrimp and a pound of strawberries. He also wanted a bucket of original recipe KFC with some French fries. If you didn't know, Gacy had once managed a KFC outlet. Eileen Wuornos, the first female on this list and the killer made even more notorious by the movie Monster, declined the last meal but did at the end have a cup of coffee. Now for another woman who makes the list just because her final meal was quite special. Kelly Gissendaner didn't actually commit a murder, but she was behind the killing of her husband in 1997. Apparently it was all over a life insurance policy. Just before she was executed with a lethal injection of drugs, she sang the song Amazing Grace and said she was sorry for what she'd done. Prior to that, she wolfed down a plate of nachos with meat filling, some cheese dip with chips, and some diet lemonade. We doubt she was watching her weight though, because the first time she was supposed to be executed, she ordered another big meal. Her execution was stayed this time, but it came so close she got to make the order. That consisted of 2 Whoppers from Burger King, 2 large fries, some cornbread, a large salad with eggs, cheese, and veg, all covered with a generous helping of Paul Newman buttermilk dressing. For dessert, she asked for popcorn and cherry vanilla ice cream. The last woman on this list is Velma Barfield. Over a period of years, folks around this woman would mysteriously fall gravely ill and later drop dead. Some of her victims included her fiancé, 2 people she cared for, and even her mother. Little did they know that when they fell sick, it was because she'd been poisoning them. So what do you think would be a fitting last meal for a woman who spiked other people's meals with rat poison? When she was asked what she wanted in 1984, she didn't go for anything fancy, but we think her selection is quite apt. Her choice couldn't be tampered with. That was a big bag of Cheetos and a Coke. Some sources say she asked for a bag of cheese doodles, but we're sure that if that was the case, they were still air-sealed. It would seem unfair to only have Americans on this list, but there aren't many countries left that execute people. As the New York Times wrote, having a choice of a last meal is a peculiarly American fascination. And it does seem that when the government makes you bite the dust in countries such as China, you don't get to choose what you eat. The article talked about a person who'd studied US-based last meals. He said the average number of calories in the meals was 2,756, although some were over 7,000. It's not that way in China, apparently, with some reports saying condemned Chinese prisoners got a measly bit of steamed bread that they ate with the men who were about to shoot them. Another guy received a large bowl of meat dumplings, according to the Washington Post. That wasn't his choice, though. Seems in Europe, back in the day, some prisoners might have had a choice. In the UK in 1879, a convicted killer got a plate of eggs and salty bacon. We imagine the German outlaw rebel Matthias Kneißl had a choice. That's because before his head was chopped off in 1902, he drank 6 glasses of beer. We can also tell you that it's a fact that in the Middle Ages in Germany, before a person was beheaded or broken on the wheel, they were offered copious amounts of booze. An executioner named Franz Schmidt kept a diary of his many executions and wrote that a drunk prisoner was often easier to handle. It's said that before Saddam Hussein was hanged in Iraq, he was offered some smokes but turned them down. He also might have turned his nose up at a plate of chicken and shawarma rice, although those are just rumors. It seems when it comes to last meals, the US is the only place really worth asking about. Now you need to watch Man So Violent Even Other Prisoners Fear Him, or see why this man never had a choice, how they actually caught Jeffrey Dahmer.